Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 31st of January, 2024, and this is the Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider meeting. We are a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which basically can be summarized as please treat each other as you would expect to be treated, and explicitly so, please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, raise your hand, and I will call on you. So we normally do our bug triage and everything and go through our sub-project updates. So let's start with, are there any sub-project updates that people would like to give today?
Nothing from Azure this time. Thanks.
Yeah, same. Nothing from AWS also.
Cool. All right. Well, then we'll move on to the agenda and we'll come back to the triage at the end. All right. So, Andrew, you've got the first topic here, kind of bringing up something about DIMS wanting to remove everything. So why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Okay, is my audio okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so this is maybe also a sub-project update, but I saw some PRs from DIMS that I haven't checked the state of the last PRs, but there was a PR to officially remove the Azure provider in tree, and then there's also a PR to remove the vSphere provider. I don't know if they merged, but they seem close to merging last I checked.
I think the Azure one,
which is great. Like, I'm glad we're moving forward with that. And like, but I think the original plan was to graduate the feature gates we have for like permanently disabling the cloud providers, and then to remove providers after that. But like, obviously, like I personally have no objections if like people want to remove it before that. But given vSphere and Azure are already kind of removed, that leaves the Google provider left, which is a little trickier because of our dependency with testing and how much we use it in CI. But it does beg the question of whether, if we think 1.30 is a reasonable timeline, or if having the feature gates to disable cloud providers in beta for just one release, 1.29, and then going straight to GA in 1.30, if we think that's a reasonable timeline, or if we feel like we should wait maybe just one more release. Like, I think anything more than 2 releases is overkill, but 1 release might be too aggressive. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it up here. And because I know like we have to do caps soon, right? Or did we miss the cap deadline? I'm not even keeping track of the dates anymore. But yeah.
That's a good question. I see Walter's got his hand up.
I wasn't going to address the cap, although I think the cap deadline is actually next week. So what I was going to say is I think we should try to do these. And I think there are a few steps we want to do, and we should do them somewhat in order. I mean, obviously, a provider is welcome to remove their code if they want. But I think we've got the feature gates that Andrew brought up. I think once the feature gates are flipped, we have build flags that actually disable the code. And I would suggest that we flip the build flags if
Walter, you just got muted.
Okay. Did you get all
you
of
said
that?
flip you said flip the build flag and then you got muted.
Sorry about that. Flip the build flag that disables the cloud provider code, and then if that doesn't cause any problems, we can go ahead and delete the code encompassed by those build flags. But that would be my suggestion of kind of a reasonable set of ordered steps for this.
Bridget, you were next.
Yes, I agree with Walter. I think Dim's enthusiasm to move forward on this sounds great and is admirable. And I want to make sure we don't cause disruption that's needless. Like, let's not build and shoot ourselves with our own foot gun. Like, we may as well just follow the progression that Walter's outlining, just to make sure that it's smooth. I don't want to give anyone a bad time. We're not here. We're here for giving people a good time with their cloud provider, not a bad time. And I don't want to create, unless there's some urgency that I don't understand, I'm not sure why we have to rush it one release versus another. So maybe that's the question back to Dims is, does it have to be that specific release?
Yeah, so I wanted to add a point in here too. And I see Walter, did you just re-raise your hand, or, and do you mind if I cut in line in front of you? So to the notion of doing it in 1.30, I don't think we should move those to GA in 1.30. I think we should stick with the plan that we put forward in the cap. The cap says in 1.31 is when we're going to move to GA for those feature gates. And I think that when we looked at that in 1.29, we looked at what the deprecation timelines were, and it seemed like 2 releases was where we wanted to be at for when we wanted to go from beta to GA. So I think that even though I agree with everyone, we're like, the horses are already out of the barn at this point. We already started to remove providers. So even though we probably should have left the providers in there, if we were going to make these feature gates still disableable until we went GA. But yeah, at this point, I think it's okay to remove those. And our goal is at 131 is when we go GA, and GCP should be removed by 131. So that would be my preference. Walter, please.
So I actually liked Bridget's question, and I don't know the answer, but I know some potential answers to Bridget's question of why do people want this gone? And the obvious one is just, we've been saying we do it for a long time, and then maybe there's a bit of frustration. But I think potential real reasons why people want this gone is that the Kube API server, the Kube controller manager, and the kubelet are each more than twice as big as they need to be because we haven't removed this code. And I think there are specific efforts like TNA, or Nefio, excuse me. There's specific efforts like Nefio that the size of those binaries actually matters. And so I don't know if that's where DIMS is coming from, but it may be.
Well, that's totally reasonable. But again, we're talking a difference of a few months. So sure, I just want to know why the time is important.
100%. Like I said, I think it's a great question. And I think, like we should actually ask, I'm just plus oneing your question because I think there are some legitimate reasons, and we should just ask DIMS, hey, what's the urgency?
Well, and I put in the chat, I'm sorry, I'm not hand raising at this point. Walter still has his hand up, and I assume that he still has things he wants to say, but I'll jump in and say, I put in the chat that, okay, so say, Azure and other providers already removed early. That's fine. That doesn't mean it's fair of us to rush GCP because we had a plan. And especially given their integral piece in testing, it feels a little irresponsible for us to drop a big surprise on our GCP friends and say, good luck, have fun. We're suddenly making you do this right this second. I don't know. I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, and I think for me, the timeline is less concerning, and what's more concerning is the mismatch of the feature gate and the functionality, right? Because now in 1.30, you're going to have vSphere and Azure users who in 1.29, they explicitly enable the feature gate because they need more time. So in 1.30, we're still saying oh, this feature gate's still beta, you're good. But then the code is gone. So it actually doesn't work. So that user experience, I mean, I think it's up to the providers if they're okay with that experience. But the mismatch of the feature gates is a little bit weird to me. If we were really adamant on removing it, I think we should just say okay, 1.30, we're gonna push the timeline a bit and GA the feature gate in 1.30 so that there's consistency between the feature gate and the actual functionality available. But now there's this weird mismatch, and I'm not even sure at this point what to do about that.
The other thing I would like to add to that, I mean, we say the cost on GCP, which, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't one, but I don't think we should underestimate the cost on other SIGs. So, I mean, there are a lot of features that, as far as I know, are still only tests that are, if not cloud provider specific, the tests only run on specific cloud providers. So like in the API machinery SIG, there are tests like the API extension, some of the API extension tests that only run on GCP. And, you know, they're pretty significant, important features, but, you know, no one else has ever bothered to do those tests anywhere else. And, you know, if we go to all of the different SIGs and say, hey, your tests are just going to stop working, you need to create new ones by the end of 130. I think that's going to have a cost. And I'm sort of hoping that if we go through the proper process, I mean, it'll help identify that. I mean, I know Almico has already been going through and identifying a lot of that, but I'm also just going to go with, it will be interesting to see as we flip various switches, as which tests disappear and which SIGs suddenly discover that they need the time that we originally planned.
I mean, these are great points, and this is kind of my concern. And I guess like I think we did kind of make a mistake by approving those PRs to remove the Azure and the vSphere code in, you know, for 1.30, because I think you're right. Like if we were following what we said in the cap, then 129, we switched the feature gate. And exactly as Andrew said, there might have been Azure and vSphere users who needed more time. So they said, you know what, we're going to follow the guidance from the cap and we're going to switch this around to keep running it. And now if we pull the rug on them in 130, even though we said this isn't going to go GA till 131, yeah, we've changed what we said we were going to do for those users. And it might be a minority of users. We don't know. I'm not sure how we make it right for them, you know?
Quick question about that, because did I imagine it, or did we pull the AWS provider out of tree some time back?
We did. We pulled AWS and OpenStack quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And theoretically,
so I think maybe that's why it didn't seem surprising or bad to me to move forward
Right.
with the Azure one, because we've been maintaining the out of tree provider for some time.
Absolutely.
And just setting an end date of, I don't know, I'm not too concerned about this being a rug pull on end users who are choosing to use whatever version of Kubernetes they use, because let's be honest, the people who do not want the newness also are not running the bleeding edge latest. Like I assure you, there are plenty of people who are running clusters of 1. Sadness. And yeah, I'm not super worried about the people who are stuck in the past being upset that whenever they get around to running 1.29 or 1.30, there will be a change. Like they're not going to get around to that for at least another year. So
yeah,
I'm not super worried about that.
Okay.
But
I mean, if you're not worried, that
about
makes me feel better.
I mean, that's why just like vSphere or just like AWS taking it out some time ago, I'm like, I'm fine with that. What I am worried about is those tests. Like what you just said, I don't think we can go to every SIG and say, surprise, that's a non-starter. We would have to hear from DIMS. Maybe that's the action item here, to hear from DIMS. What is the important urgency that we must go and put a nasty surprise on every SIG's to-do list? Like we have to know. Because maybe there's a reason that we have to make every SIG very sad right now, but that would be important information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe I'm looking at this a little aspirationally as like, if we were to retrospect on this whole process, and it's been going on for years at this point, it's not an easy thing to solve. Like, yeah, we probably should have never removed the in-tree cloud providers. We should have just froze them, right? But that battle cannot be unrun.
So yes and no.
Right.
I actually, and I don't, maybe this, all we have to say about this is there's always a cost to carrying old code. And I feel like we've been backporting bug fixes for a long time. And then there's some bug in the in-tree cloud provider that hopefully no one's using anyway, but now we're going to be like trying to cherry pick it back several versions. Oh dear, isn't going well. I'm just saying, like, removing that burden along with removing the extra code base is valuable. Like, there is a value to removing the entry providers
Absolutely.
just for that reason alone.
Yeah, I'm just saying from the signaling perspective for how long this has been going, we were never explicitly clear about how and when the providers would be removed, aside from saying that they'll be removed by the GA date. And so I think it's just, again, this is more of like a retrospective kind of thing. Like, yeah, like we probably should have been clearer to users about like, hey, these providers could disappear in the in tree, on one of the releases, and we'll advertise that, but we leave it up to each cloud provider to take whatever measures they need to remove their code, right? So yeah, I don't know. There's no perfect way to solve this, right? Okay, is there anything else we need to say on this aside from we're going to follow up by talking to DIMS about kind of the urgency?
No,
Okay.
I think that's good. Maybe like the question is, do we invite him to the next SIG meeting, or should we have like a? I think he was trying to make this call, but he had a conflict or something. So might be worth just like setting up a smaller meeting with him.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Like either that or if it's better to catch him at a different SIG meeting, maybe at like SIG Cluster Lifecycle or something, maybe a couple of us could go over there and have that conversation.
Yeah, sounds good. Or even maybe SIG Arch, maybe, I don't know.
So the one thing I will say, going back to someone's question from the original beginning of the meeting, is KEP is coming up quickly, and we probably should chat with them about this before the KEP meeting or the KEP deadline.
Yeah. Maybe this week. Just like a 15-minute call.
You're talking about the 1.31 KEP freeze, or are you talking about 1.30 KEP freeze? Like, I think we're already past that, aren't we?
I thought the KEP freeze was next week.
For 1.30.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
But I think, if he wants to get something done by 1:30, and we should give it an opportunity that if he convinces us that it does need to happen in 1:30, that it's still possible, which means that we should have the chat with him before 1:30. I mean, obviously we're hoping to convince him to wait till 1:31, but let's at least make sure that we're being,
Yeah. Okay, so we need to talk
Totally
to DIMS
fair.
this week.
Totally fair, but just to be clear, it's more that he has to convince us to change our published plan, because there's a burden on a lot of SIGs if we change our published plan. And so there better be a good reason. Because if it's just, we're all very impatient. We all feel that way, and we agree with him, and we will get it done soon.
And there's
Cool.
the possibility of having to do some nasty reverts for the Azure vSphere provider, but hopefully we don't have to go there.
Yeah, like hopefully that doesn't have to happen. I think at this point the focus is on the GCP stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Do
we want to push ourselves to try and remove all the GCP stuff in 1:30? And I'm kind of against it, but let's see what DIMS has to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good discussion on that topic, folks. If there's nothing else on that, let's go look at let's go see if we have any issues that need triage right now.
Oh yeah, and don't forget to put your names on the agenda. I will drop the link in the chat in case you don't have it handy. But be sure to mention that you were here if you like.
Oh, actually, just one more topic before we go into triage. So I found out today that I didn't get travel approval for KubeCon, so I also won't be going. So, and I know Michael said he can't go either. So either we cancel the talk, or someone else on the SIG, like if they want to, like Bridget or whoever else might be going wants to take the slot, they could.
I found out 2 days ago that I am going. So it is possible, though I think the time that they scheduled it conflicts with governing board stuff. So once again, we might have to shuffle that around. But I am going to look at the currently muted Joel and say, hey, Joel, do you want to unmute and tell us if, I mean, KubeCon is basically walking distance for you, right? You just have to take, you know, the train over to Paris, take it through the tunnel, right?
Does, but I wasn't intending to go to Paris this year because I'm taking 3 weeks PTO starting the week after it. So
Oh, wow.
it would be a bit inconvenient to take a 4th week out of the office.
Understandable. So anyway, we can talk about this offline, but we should figure out someone who can go. I will be there. We might just have to do something about the time. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean they've worked with us in the past on the times and stuff like that. So if you're willing to host it, that's awesome, Bridget. And we can still like look around in the community and see if maybe there'll be other people there who might want to join you or something.
Yeah, let's figure it out. I'm certainly willing to work with you and be creative about preparing something that is still substantially what you wanted to go with.
Yeah, I think our slot in there now is kind of like an update slot about all this cloud provider removal stuff. So it's like it's pretty much on topic, right? It's not something crazy or whatever.
Okay. So
Yeah.
a request
think-
in the chat, or a request is who all is going to be there? Because it's a great time to get some exposure if you like to do that sort of thing. What was your point, Andrew?
I was just gonna say like I know it can be pretty stressful, especially if you're doing multiple talks. So don't feel like you have to like take the slot. We can always save the topic for like NA. Because I especially like if we end up going with the timeline of doing the actual removal in 1.31, that'll still roughly line up with KubeCon NA. So not the end of the world if we save the topic.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Chris, I see your chat message there. Would you have any interest in being a co-presenter for the SIG on this?
See if I can get my Zoom working. Sure. Yeah. I don't have the history that you all have about provider removal. I'm more from the maintaining a provider perspective, right? So I don't know if I can add as much, but yeah, I'm happy to participate.
That is actually a great perspective. Let's sync offline. I actually
Okay.
have another call in 4 minutes that I must go to shortly, so I will disappear shortly here. But let's sync and make this happen.
Okay.
Yeah, that is awesome, Chris. And I agree with Bridget. That's the perfect perspective, like, because people love to, we love to get new faces up there and everything. So yeah, we'll sync offline and figure out what's up there. And yeah, sorry to hear you won't be able to make it there, Andrew.
It's all good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so it looked like we just had one item on the triage, and I think we talked about this one last time. This is the.
Sorry, I do need to drop. I am going to drop. I will catch you all.
All right, thanks, Bridget. So I don't know if there's any follow-up we need to do here or not, because none of these tests were specifically for us. They were all kind of like networking and storage tests, I thought. Is there anything we need to add here to this issue? I will take silence as a no. And I think that was the only issue we had open there. Yeah, it looks like that was the only one we have open. The other one's the old one. So I guess, are there any other ad hoc topics we should go over, or are we good to take about 30 minutes of our day back here?
Just real quick, who's taking the action item to set up a call with DIMS?
That is a good question. I can reach out to him.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had like one small topic. Like I didn't get time to create that issue in upstream in the repo, but we can just discuss. So while I was doing one issue, like I found that if we pass the kubeconfig file as a flag, the CCM is not bootstrapping. And when I looked into why that's not happening, I saw that it's because the authentication options is using a flag of its own, to pass custom kubeconfig file. I'm just trying to see, is it expected or like, I'm just passing the code, what I found in the chat. So it's expecting a different flag to pass the custom kubeconfig file. If you don't want to read it from the environment variables. So but I think if you're passing a flag kubeconfig file to Cloud Provider, I think I'm expecting that should be used here, or at least we should pass that flag to maybe have it to the options. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we should definitely have a minus kube config option if that's the question. Like even if we keep this one as like the backup or whatever, like that seems kind of confusing.
Yeah, we have the minus kube config option, but since this specific options is not like using the flag, so we need to pass two separate flags for the provider to actually use a custom kubeconfig file.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Walter's got his hand up. Walter, please.
So, I mean, I'd need to look a little closer, but I would say my rule of thumb on this one would be CCMs there's some of the code that is common for everyone, and there is and then anyone is welcome to override, any cloud provider is welcome to override in their actual implementation. And I would suggest that as much as possible, we try to stay consistent at the generic level with the KCM. So I would see what the KCM is doing. We should really just unify this code with the KCM, but I would say let's stay consistent with the KCM at the generic level. And then, so if the KCM has it and we don't, then we're just lagging behind and we should fix it. If it's not at the KCM, that would suggest to me there's something going on here that's cloud provider specific. And then possibly this should be done at the cloud provider specific portion of your CCM code. But again, I'm just rule of thumbing this one. I haven't actually looked into this issue yet.
Yeah, so this is coming from the Cloud Provider library. So when it's initializing, it will initialize some generic options and authentication options. So I look into like how KCM is doing it. I haven't actually taken a look at the KCM code. I'll take a look and maybe we can, yeah. But if the initialization is happening from the Cloud Provider library, like I'm not sure if the specific provider will have an option to override it, because this is something provided by the provider, Cloud Provider library, right?
There is, so I'm not ready to give it right now because I don't have all the materials at hand. But when we originally did the last big round of CCM changes, I can try and find the doc, but there is an entire system specifically designed for allowing cloud providers to have their own flags on the CCM. That was a specific goal of the changes, was to make that easy to do.
Yes. That part I understand, and I'm aware of that. So I know that part of the piece of code is present, and I think a lot of providers are using them. But this code path comes from not the custom flag used by the cloud specific cloud provider, but there are few in the cloud provider library. We're adding few generic options. One of the generic option is to have an option to override kubeconfig file, and in the library itself, it's actually using that override and creating a client based on. If you see, even Cloud Provider library also creates a kube client, and it is handling or using that flag. But this specific option, which is calling from the library itself, not from specific to any cloud provider initialization. I mean, custom cloud provider, right? Like it's coming from the code path of the cloud provider library itself. So that's where I have that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, and but I haven't dug in, so I don't have
Yeah,
a ready
yeah. Maybe
answer.
I'll create an issue and then we can start. We can discuss.
Well, I would suggest start looking at the KCM.
Yeah.
My guess
first
is
click.
that if this is legitimately a problem, that it's probably was a problem for KCM and they've probably already solved it. And we just, because the code should be shared with the KCM, but currently isn't, they got the fix we didn't, and we just need to port that fix into our code. And once again, kick ourselves for not actually having gotten to common code for this.
Sure, yeah. I look at KCM and then we can decide based on that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Thanks for bringing that issue up, Kirthan. I guess as long as we're here, I'll bring up one other thing, just to see if maybe Walter and Andrew, if you guys have thoughts on this. Although it looks like maybe Andrew dropped already. We have the old cloud provider sample repo. And I had opened an issue, I guess I opened an issue to update the README. And I opened an issue last year to say, is this repo still relevant? I don't think it is. Like, it seems like at one time we were going to have sample code here for how to make this, how to make your own cloud provider. But it appears that we put that into the cloud provider repo. We actually have a sample in there of this. And this other repository has not been active for a very long time. So there is an issue we can open with contribx to have this archived. And then I think before we do that, I was just trying to propose an update to the README to give a link to where the sample is, and then we could archive this repo. I don't know, Walter, do you think there's ever will we ever return here and build out like a full-fledged example here? Or do you think it's worthwhile just to archive this?
I would say archive it with one caveat, and I think I'm just wrong, but I'll throw the one caveat off just in case. Staging and Kubernetes has a weird history. Everything under staging was always intended to be their own repos, but people wanted to be able to make changes in staging and changes in core at the same with one PR. And so there are a couple of repos that aren't real repos. They just look like repos that are in fact just mirrors of bits of staging. And so the only thing I would say is if it's a mirror of a bit of staging, and then it would be, if you made a change in that bit of staging, the change would appear in the mirrored repo. If that's what's going on, I don't think we need to worry about it. We can leave it alone. If that's not what's going on, then I think we should clean it up.
Okay. All right, cool. I will follow up and do some research there. And thanks. That's great. Okay. Anything else people want to talk about?
Yeah, I want to talk about.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I'm a member of contributor comms team and I pinged Elmico for the interview.
Oh, right. You need us to fill out the documentation on that, right?
Yes, that one.
I can try, I'll try and get it done by tomorrow. It sounded like you wanted it by Thursday, right?
Yes. Like Brigade will also be there. Like I want both of you guys. It would be great if both of you will contribute.
Okay. I can't speak for Bridget. I'll try and fill out my part on there. Did you want to actually have a conversation with us, or did you want us just to fill out the questions on the Google Doc you shared?
Yeah, I think it's better to write down because the process then gets faster. So yeah, the interview is in written form.
Okay, I'll try to put my stuff in today, and I'll ping Bridget and just see if, if she can get her stuff in, then we should be, I think that should be it, right?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you for your time, Elmico.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for bringing it up. I'm not, how do I pronounce your name? Is Arujwal?
Yeah, Arujul. Hi.
Aruji? Okay. Well, yeah, no,
Thank
thank you
you.
as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else we should cover? All right. Thanks, Chris. All right. Going in 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, we'll see y'all next time, and everyone have a good Wednesday.